Hi everyone, my name is Josephine. I'm so excited to share with you this very easy and creative way to study scripture, especially using this called verse mapping. So we're going to be in this video, I'm going to show you how we can use verse mapping for your personal devotion. Particularly, we will be adopting also inductive Bible study methods, if you have heard about this term before, which is 3 easy steps where you can use it to study the Bible: observation, interpretation, and application. So in this video, I'm going to demonstrate verse mapping by using these 3 easy steps. So hopefully this video will be helpful to you, and stay tuned for more videos in the future. I'm so excited that you're watching this video, and in this video you'll be learning 3 easy steps to study the scriptures and what we call inductive Bible study methods. And these 3 easy steps, which step number 1, observation, step number 2, interpretation, and step number 3, applications. So under observation, we will look at what are some of the key words, or some of the who, what, when, where, why, how, and who is talking here, where, and what is happening, and why is it happening. And under the interpretation, where we will be, after we looked at the keywords, what are the repetitions, then we want to find out what are some of the meanings of the keywords or the passage. What is the context of the passage, the historical context or the cultural context of the passage. And last but not least, what we call the applications, where we'll be looking at how does that passage going to apply to our lives. So how does it actually work in our personal life? All right, so how can we start? Step number 1. So in this verse mapping, very important. The first thing we would do is to pray. Okay, so we pray and ask God, okay, give us the inspiration that we need. Secondly, after that, we will then read the whole passage. Why is it necessary that we read the whole passage? Because if we read the whole passage, we'll be able to understand what is the flow of the passage, right? You don't want to take out one verse, even though we call it verse mapping, without a full understanding of what the whole passage is about. So we will read the whole passage, and then after that, as you pray and God has spoken to you, maybe there one verse that you want to take it out and study it. So this is what we call verse mapping. So in this example here, we'll be looking at Ephesians 2. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. Just look through this passage, Ephesians number 2, from verse 1 to 10. Okay, so you can just give you 5 minutes time, and you can just go through it and then meditating and read it at least more than once, okay? And then see which verse God kind of wants to talk to you, okay? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes and try to read it a few times, okay? Keep repeating it and read what is one verse that jumps out to you. So I hope that you have spent some time reading this passage, or at least one time, at least 2 or 3 times. So I hope that there might be one verse that jumped to you after you read this passage. Maybe God has used a particular verse, really spoke to you. So the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to take out one verse that is from this passage, which I have chosen, which is verse 2, chapter 2, the verse 10, which is, "For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them." So I'm going to pick this verse as my verse mapping. This is what I usually do. For my verse mapping. First of all, I would write that verse in the middle of the page, in a blank paper, okay? And then after that, I would spend some time, use a color pen to highlight any keywords that I want to look up the meaning. So I would look up the meanings of these words. So this is what I'm going to do is I will use a pen to highlight all the keywords that I want to study. So use a color pen to highlight any keywords that you see from the verse. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. All right, so after that, you have done that. You have highlighted keywords. You should be looking something like this. So I've highlighted the keywords. So step number 2 after that is I would then look up the meanings of these words. So I have an app called Inductive, an Inductive Bible Study app. So this app, you'll be able to find the keywords from this app. Okay, sorry. So if you live outside of China, which some of my students in this video, they might be watching. So Inductive Bible Study app. So you can just download this app on your app store. And it's a free app that you can download called Inductive Bible Study app. And after you download it, there is, that will show up in your phone. And what you need to do is to go in to click in the verse that you're looking. Under the Bible, you go to Ephesians 2 and chapter 2, where the verse located. And after that, I will click into the app. So inside the verse. So the verse, it has the verse here. So I double click the verse. And after that, you will see there are a bunch of words that are being highlighted in this verse. So in some way, they kind of do the observation for you because these are the keywords that you should be paying attention to. So if you can see it here, the bunch of numbers here, these are the Strong's numbers. So basically, it's like almost like a concordance, like a dictionary that you go back to this number is called Strong's number that you can look up the original meanings of these words. So once you click in there, you will see there's something called Strong's number, which is 4161 workmanship. So in here, you'll be able to find the original meaning, the Greek word, and the original meaning, the definition of this word. So in here, you can see workmanship is something that which has been made a work of God as creator. And as you can see in the apps, also you see cross references, which you'll be able to find where this particular word actually appeared in various places. Okay, so all you need to do right now is just to go into this app and find out what is the original meaning of those keywords. Okay, so let's go back here. If you're outside of, if you're in China, you cannot download the app. I encourage you to download this app in China, where you'll be able to, same as the other apps before, where you'll be able to look up the Chinese meaning of these words, and then you'll be able to go to more, then you'll be able to find the Strong's number here as well. And as you can see here, you can see the original meaning right here, which is the Greek words. So you'll be able to do the same thing. And feel free to pause the video if you need to explain it for my Chinese students at this point, to explain where you can find this app to look up the meanings. So I'm going to continue. So what you need to do next is to, on the same piece of paper, which you have already, that you would draw a few bubbles. So you draw a few bubbles there. So I have highlighted all the keywords, and then I'll look up from the apps that I've just shown you, the Inductive Bible Study app. Then you can just write down the meaning of each of these words. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. So let's pause the video for a little bit. And then I want you to find out the meanings of these words. Okay, so now you have looked up the meaning of these words. So it should look something like this. That you will be able to see all these words here that I have for all these keywords. I have it pleasant, excellent, to prepare and to make beforehand. And also here that created means we're shaped and transformed. So it's a process that we all being shaped and transformed. Workmanship being the God, something God is being a creator. Our works, it could be any forms of work, could be a job, could be anything we accomplish using hand, art, mindset and act, or anything, deeds, or education and everything. So I find it is very exciting to see. It's not just a particular type of work. It's actually every everything that we have, God puts in a path, is part of His work. And to walk in them is to live out and to live out and, pass through a whole life who walk out these important good works that God has prepared beforehand for each one of us. Okay, so besides looking at the meanings of the key words, there are a few other things that you can consider of doing, but it's totally optional, but I think it will really help you to understand the passage in a deeper way. So first thing you can do is to look up the context of the passage, which you would then go to some of the websites that I'm going to introduce in a second. You will look up who was the author, who were the audiences, and what was the purpose, and why did the author write that book. So you can use the white space in this page to write down just very briefly what's the purpose of the book, who was the author, why he wrote, what he wrote, who were the original audiences, what were their struggles, and or something that is important about the context, the background of the book. So you can just write down very briefly. So there are a few websites that is very helpful. One of them is called blueletterbible.org. So if you have go to this website, it's a very powerful free website, and they also have a mobile version. So if I were you, if you're interested in using this app, go to YouTube and look up a tutorial on blueletterbible.org. It's a very powerful tool. I personally use it, especially for deeper studies. And they actually have a lot of information, have commentaries, have historical background, cultural backgrounds, and lots of information. Another website that I use personally, if you want something very quick, is called Insight for Living. So if you know Chuck Swindoll's ministry, he's a famous preacher in US. I often go to his website to look for something very quick and easy. So Insight for Living under Bible, biblical resources. They have Bible chart and a very quick overview of the book. Or whatever book commentary that you have that you can quickly look up that information, you feel free to do that as well. For my China students, I just found out there are two websites that would be very helpful to you from my friend. These two websites here that you'll be able to look up other context, the keywords, and the biblical context of the passage. So if you live in China, or if you want in Chinese, you can still access from outside of China. So you can just go up to these two sites here if you're more comfortable reading Chinese. All right, so you go to these websites to look up the context, who the author, the purpose of the book, and historical background. Another thing that you can do is to compare different translations and seeing how different words being used to gain better insights. And soon you will discover, I'm going to show you a quick example, you will see just the same verse in different translations. They use different wordings. And I think it's easier to see in English. I think Chinese usually is not as much of a variation. You quickly see the difference. For example, I have few translations here, NIV, NLT, and NET. So as you can see here, just the word workmanship, right? In 3 different places, they have different words to describe workmanship. So NIV, it says handiwork, God's handiwork. And then in NLT, it says masterpiece. And I love this translation where it talks about masterpiece, because when I think of masterpiece, I often think about the piece of very amazing artwork that an artist spends so much time just to have that perfect masterpiece. And I just love that translation, just to remind myself that I am God's masterpiece, that He spent so much time and effort, and He loved me so much and make me the perfect being, of course, through a lifetime, right? To make us to be the perfect being, and we have a purpose to live out. And so I just love that translation for myself personally. And NET, Net Bible, you can see is creative work. So as you can see here, different translations, it gives you a different insight of what this verse is trying to tell us. So it's a very valuable tool if you would like to expand yourself with studying. So now we've talked about how to look up the keywords, in the bubbles. And if you're interested, you can go look up the context, which I just show you the website that you can go up to look up the author who's writing it, the intent of the author, what's the meaning, the purpose of the book. Another thing that you can do is to compare different translations. And ultimately, we want to know, you wanted to realize that scripture interprets scriptures. And I find it very encouraging. So next, what you need to do once you know the meanings of these words, the key words, then you would go into this step called applications, which is the step number 3. So how is it going to affect my life, right? Even though we know all this, but how is it going to work in my life? And a lot of times we kind of stop here when we do the Bible study, right? We kind of find out the keywords and then we find out the meaning of the passage, but then we stop there. So remember, application is very important because we're not just doing an intellectual exercise. It's really for our personal growth and a personal study. So I hope that this is a very important step for our growth, especially spiritual growth. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at these meanings, and then we would then ask ourselves, is there a prayer I can pray? Is there a promise that God has given to us? Is there a sin and error that I need to change? Is there a challenge that I see that God wanted me to change? Is it He's challenging me to change something? Are there any commands that I need to follow? So I'm going to pause here for a little bit so you can use the white space around that page to write down your personal reflections, a prayer, a promise, a sin, or challenge or command. So you just use the surrounding white spaces to write out what your reflection is about. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes so you can pause the video right now. And after you're done, I'm going to show you the end, how is this going to look like. Okay, so pause the video for 5 minutes. All right, so welcome back after you're done. I want to show you the example that I have here. This is something that personally really spoke to me. So these little bubbles here, the explanation, what we talked about just now is observation, step number 1, which is to highlight any keywords. Then after that, that will be step number 2, which we looked up the keywords, which is interpretation. Step number 2, interpretation, where we'll look at all the keywords and we'll put them in a bubble next to the keywords that we have. And now just now we have finished our application where you have reflected all these meanings that something God has spoken to you. So I would usually write at the white space here. So a prayer that I have for God, like, God, help me to see and use my experience and my circumstances for your masterpiece. And I just want to thank Him for planning my life, that I can hope that I can walk in them for His good purpose. Or are there any sins? Or maybe a sin that I have, maybe I sometimes use my gifts for the wrong purpose or for my own indulgence or for my own glory. So I ask God to forgive me if that's the case. And other reflections would be, I really want to hope that God can use everything in my life to bring Him glory for His good work. So as you can see, it's very fluid, very flexible, but I'm sure after you have observed the passage, interpret what the key meaning of the passage, I'm sure God would have spoken to you in some ways, in some form. And for me, sometimes I will also write down a keyword or key phrases that I see from this passage that I want to take it away from today. And for me, I wrote walk, because I think this is such a reassuring experience for me that sometimes I think we have to plan a lot of things. We're always doubting if this is whether God's will, what I'm doing. But really, ultimately, if we're in tune with God, if we are walking with God, constantly seeking His just trying to grow our relationship with Him, and automatically we would be walking in His good purpose, because we will be in tune with His heart, and we just need to walk on the path that He has prepared for each one of us. So you can see me, this little me here, and God, I always use this symbol in my journals and my devotions and my my note-taking as a way that God would be speaking to me. So as you can see, you can use your own way, your own method, or your own creative ideas that to reflect on what God has spoken to you. So I hope this video has been helpful to you, that we have talked about verse mapping using the 3 simple methods: observation, interpretation, and applications, and also show you a little bit some of the creative drawings that little cute little drawings that will help you to remember. And I hope this video has been helpful to you, and I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.